Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we tackle the tough issues, the front of the house, the back of the house, the office, anything that improves the customer experience. Because if customers are happy with the services that you provide, they will come to you for everything they need when they need it, and they will be your greatest assets. They will bring their friends, their family, their coworkers, everybody. And I am blessed and excited to have a great network of friends and colleagues that come on the show weekly to share with the audience what they do or what they've done to improve that experience in their stores. And tonight, this is really a touching moment for me because I've known Jerry through SDL, which is Service Drive Live. If you're not familiar with it, it's a group of fixed ops professionals that gets together on Sunday mornings at 7 o'clock Pacific time, or no, wait a minute, no, what, 8 o'clock Eastern.
8 o'clock Eastern. Yep. 7 o'clock or 5 a.m. Pacific time. It's crazy.
All right. Now, I've been beyond swamped with work as I'm coming to you now from by the Canadian border near Niagara Falls.
Oh, wow.
So it's, I'm always on the road between training and, workshops, things like that. But I wanted to share Jerry's story because I've kind of seen Jerry struggle with some things. And then I took the time to pick up the phone and call him. And what came out of this guy's mouth, I said to Jerry earlier, why aren't we spending more time on the phone, you and I? Because I love what's in his head, right? Mindset is everything. So, Jerry, welcome to the show, my friend. Why don't you tell the folks that may or may not know you a little bit about your background and what brought you to this point?
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate Paul having me on here, and it's a true honor to be here this evening. We met through SDL a few years ago, and thanks to all the guys at SDL. It's a great program. It's well worth me ever since I've been on the Pacific Coast, getting up at 5 a.m. on a Sunday. And then ending my evenings with Paul Meijer and then, of course, Vernon Davis. Been a great growth opportunity for me. But I've been in the fixed operations business for over 20 years. I started off as a technician and worked my way. I went from technician, hurt my back, being a tech, not taking care of myself. Became a back counter parts person. So it was a good, smooth transition for me. Being a tech, then I knew what parts the techs needed and I could help them. And that led to an opportunity. I was going to be the parts manager. That's all I wanted to be, was just a parts manager. And the service manager didn't come to work one day. His wife had passed away, unfortunately, and that led to an opportunity of just covering the counter. The owner said, just cover the service counter. I know you can open an RO. We'll find somebody, and then you go back to being in parts. And then it started with questions. It was just like, can you do this? Can you make the system do that? Can you build out things this way? The office manager started asking me questions, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Let me find out. I didn't know anything. I just said, I said, I don't know, but I'll find out. And I was the guy that always followed through. And that's just kind of how it transitioned into being a service manager. Went from that to a fixed operations director. And then I've been either a service manager, service advisor, or fixed ops director ever since. So had a lot of stops, a lot of journeys along the way, a lot of mistakes. I've failed quite a bit, but at the end of the day, I've always gotten back on the horse. I've always learned something from my mistakes, and I've always moved forward. And now, due to some family issues, I moved back to Roseburg, Oregon, which is an hour and a half from where I grew up, and it feels like home again. And I feel that I am in a good place. I work for Lithia Roseburg as their service manager of the CGAR store. And we've taken that store from the worst CSI in the nation. And I'm not just saying that. It was literally 6 months ago, it was the worst CSI in the entire nation of all the Chrysler dealers in the United States. And we have taken that and turned it around. And we're not the best, but we're at least in the region and we're in the conversation now. So very proud of my team, very proud of the hard work, but it's been a lot of conversations, a lot of book reading, a lot of self-help, and a lot of reflection on getting to where I am today.
Wow. I mean, that's one hell of a story. So let me get to a couple of comments and then we'll keep going. Lamont Harris, formerly known as LinkedIn user, Says, hello,
Yes.
fellas. Russell B. Hill, two of my favorite guys. Hello, Jerry Davis and Paul Meijer. Robert Allen Carvel, focus on needs, value the customer's time. Always ahead of whatever is in second best. Thank you, Robert. Russell B. Hill, Jerry, so happy for you and all of your accomplishments. And one of our favorite ladies, Kate Borowski, says, Jerry, Jeff Daniels, honest winner. All right, so everybody starts somewhere, and your story is a really good one. I've had similar, we've kind of gone to different schools together where I started as a trainee mechanic also and worked my way up through the ranks over the years in various different positions in both the aftermarket and in dealership and beyond. But I want to start kind of at the beginning, all right? For you, I want to get into your understanding of the groundwork. At some point in your time, you had to say, okay, this is what I'm doing now, but I want to become a service manager because for whatever that reason was, whether it's to make a difference, whether it's for your own career development, and now you had to figure out how do you go from point A to point B. So let's talk to us about setting under and understanding the groundwork on how you got started.
So really, what got me started is, when I took over for that service manager, I'll never forget this. He called me at like 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd moved out of town and he called me and he said a few things, trying to sour the milk a little bit. And I'm like, I'm not going to ever be that guy. I'm not ever going to be that guy that sours the milk for the next guy coming up. And so I didn't know anything. I was a horrible manager. When I took over as the service manager of that small Toyota store on the Oregon coast, I was the worst manager on the planet. I fired people. I yelled at people. I hollered. I screamed. I jumped up and down because that's what I saw get results before. And it wasn't until I went to an anger management training course because I was just angry all the time about everything. So I went to an anger management course, and then I just started some self-help stuff, some Audible stuff, and just really started taking close attention to the changing tide. Because what used to work, the hollering and screaming really actually used to work, believe it or not. Was it the right thing to do? Absolutely not. But I started listening to what the people around me were saying, like, hey, Jerry, we just wish you would listen to us, or hey, we would love to have an opinion. We would love to, and I started listening to the people around me, and that really grew into something for me. And I kind of woke up one day about 2 years into that job, and I'm like, I want to be the best service manager there is. And so I just kind of never looked back after that. We won the President's Award at that store for the first time in 20 years.
Wow.
We had the best CSI. I had the best relationship with the manufacturer. I literally had friends at Toyota Corporate that I could just call and say, hey, I need something, and they would do it. And it was a nice feeling to know that I kind of felt like I finally arrived. And I just felt like, when I hear people say, well, you're better than the other guy ever was, it was kind of like a peacock moment. And I'm not very big on peacocking myself. Yeah. But it was I just wanted to be the best service manager. I wanted to listen to my people. I wanted to give my people opportunities to grow. And I will be the first one to tell people, even at this new store that I'm at now, I am the hardest guy to work for because I set the expectation. And the maddest I ever get is not mad at them. I'm mad at the fact that they didn't live up to their full potential. Because I see so much potential in everybody. And even though they don't see it in themselves, I push them to reach their full potential. And then when they come into my office and say, I never thought I could do that. And if it wasn't for you, I made it. And I'm like, you can do more. You're not done yet. And so I always keep raising the bar. I give them the reward, but I keep raising the bar. And so it was a lot. There's been a lot of people, Jared Humboldt is one that comes to mind. Dan Wilder Jr., he's an owner I worked for, gave me a lot of tools and success stories and helped me along the way. And there's just so many people. I could go on for days. Everybody in SDL, Joe Chambers, Eric, you, Lamont. I see everybody's story and I get inspired by these stories, and I just continue to love to see this business grow, get better. And I'm just excited every day when I get to have a new challenge. And right now,
So,
Roseburg CDJR is my challenge, and it's been a fun one.
so the first takeaway that I have is self-awareness, right? How many of us watching now or will be watching on the replay, how many of us can truly look in the mirror and say we suck at something?
I can. I suck every day. I can tell you that honestly. I am my own worst critic. I get people telling me that I've done this, I've done that. I mean, they know my story as good as I do, and they're like, "You're one of the best we've seen," and I just don't see it. I don't know what it is. I think it probably goes back to when I could never please my dad, and so I never felt pleased in my life. So my wife, everybody around me will tell me I'm my own worst critic, and so yeah, I'll be the
Well,
first one to tell you I suck at something. So it's hard for people to get mad at me, especially GMs and owners, because they come to me and they're like, "Oh, well, did you know? Yeah, I knew. I screwed up. I messed this up. I know what I did wrong. Here's how I'm going to fix it. I'm sorry." And I say I'm sorry before they even get a chance to even. Well, okay, I guess we're done talking.
we're going to talk about diffusing a situation. I mean,
Yeah, it's just like
most people will not admit their faults, right? There very few people will actually say they not only that they suck at something, but then act on what they realize their shortcomings are, and take the steps necessary, like you did. Audible, getting involved, reading self-help materials, getting involved with other peers, and learning ways to improve yourself. Very few people do that, and so I really commend you for that, because that's, that the first step is often the hardest step,
yeah,
right? It's no different than when you're trying to move something really heavy. That initial energy needed to get it rolling is tremendous. But once it starts rolling, and if you recognize it, now you can build on it. And you've done that beautifully. So tell me about one or two milestones in your life where you really, it's like you're driving along and all of a sudden you get a kick in the ass, like, wow, this is something really good that happened. And then when we talk about milestones, something that really felt good, conversely, roadblock, something that didn't feel so good, maybe something that slapped you down, and something that
yeah.
almost made you think, oh man, am I really doing what I should be doing? Am I really on the right path? Is this really for me? So milestone, roadblock.
So with milestones, the first thing I always have to bring up, and I'm not a big Bible thumper pusher, but when I got baptized and felt the need to get baptized, that was huge for me. I was working at a car dealership and I went to church with the owner and things like that. And so when I got baptized, that was a huge deal for me because that was another milestone and another level of plateau I reached in my leadership, because the best leadership book we have is the Bible. But dealership wise was when I left the Toyota store in Oregon, and I ended up moving to Washington State, and I won the President's Award at the Toyota store back to back. And then I went to the store in Washington, and we won the Honda President's Award back to back for the first time in, like, I forget what it was, 18 years. And to me, that was like I was able to do it two different times for two different stores, something that had never been done.
Common denominator being you, my friend.
Yeah, and one thing is I never liked the I part of me. Like when I talk about those things, my team helped. My team, I just was there. I was just the captain of the boat. I'm up there steering. I'm like, hey, give us a little more left rudder, a little more right rudder. You need to help me here. Come on, let's do this. I'm cheerleader and captain, and they're the ones that do the hard work. So it always goes to them. But I'd like to, every once in a while you pat yourself on the back and say, hey, it was me that got him there. Good job, Jerry. What's your next accomplishment going to be? Because you can't rest on your laurels. But one of the biggest downfalls I had, because everything we have in this world is peaks and valleys. And one of the darkest times is I made a move to a dealership. I'm not going to name the dealership, but it was down south. And I moved down there. I chased the dollar, and that was the biggest mistake I ever made, was chasing the dollar. They threw me a ton of money, and it was like, oh my God, I'm going to make so much money that I was like, oh my gosh, this is too good to be true, and it literally was. Got down there, it was a bag of empty promises. The store was way worse broken than what they told me. We had drugs, we had guns, we had all kinds of stuff, and it's the one time I actually just got up and quit. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm going to die of a heart attack, or I'm going to get shot, one of the two. And so it was just like the Wild West, and it was just a bad, 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 bad move. And
Wow.
I've never looked back from that one. But that was probably one of the lowest points in my life, because I moved my wife, I moved everything down there, bought a house, did everything I could do, thought I was doing all the right things, and just I left the other dealer kind of in the wrong way, because I needed to get down there, because I was chasing the dollar. And so that one for me is like, I let the devil win on that one, and I chased the dollar and did everything wrong. And now I'm not doing that. I'll never do that again. I'll never chase the dollar. For me, it's not about money. Granted, I don't get out of bed for free, but at the end of the day, I get out of bed to make the world a better place around me, because God knows what we're going through right now, and people are on edge. The world is on edge. Customers are on edge. It's a different environment than anything I've seen in a long time. So it's my job to make that a better place and make a better customer experience, make a better employee engagement. And so overall, that's how I get through the days. So that's kind of the peaks and valleys of my career. There's tons of them. I go on for days, but those are the two ones that stand out the most.
That's an interesting story, because you're certainly not the only one that gets offered opportunities. And we both have friends and common connections that are offered opportunities that are presented in such a way. And it seems that some of these companies really have no regard for the human side of things.
No.
They lie, they misrepresent, and people uproot their families to go for these opportunities that are painted like Picasso's, when in fact, when you remove the veil, it's paint by numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a sad thing, because there seems to be no accountability, and people just, gee, sorry you
Yeah. I
lost
got
a ton of time. Sorry you
when I
lost.
made that bad move. When I made that bad move, it was oh, you should have done your research a little more on us before you moved down here. Because I brought it up. I'm like, you never told me this. You never told me this. You never told me this. And he's like, oh, so it's my fault that I didn't research you more and took you at face value. And so I learned, like I said, I learned a valuable lesson. I burned some bridges. I broke some relationships through that whole nightmare. And I know what to do in the future, and I'll never make that same mistake again. That's one thing about me. When I make a mistake, I tend not to make it more than once. And the one thing I would tell anybody in this business, and it kind of came from a video I watched, and it's talking about a pound of steel, and it talks about your value and to know what you're worth, and that pound of steel is only worth so much in bar form. It's only worth so much if you stamp it out into plates, and it's only worth so much if you make needles out of it. But it's basically know your value, know what you're worth, look inside yourself, be your own worst critic, but then also know what your value is to the world, and never sell yourself short.
I love how you approach things and how you deal with things. One thing that I've learned over time is that, and I've seen this from others, is that, yeah, things happen, but everything's good, right? Because somebody may wrong you, but the education that you get from that is truly priceless, right? They can never take away from you the knowledge and the experience that you gain in even what we deem a bad move, because there's so much we learn from that. There are things that we learn that we'll never put up with again.
No.
We learn about the red flags. We learn about things that, maybe we should ask more. We don't assume when an opportunity comes our way that there's somebody actually standing behind the curtain ready to put a dagger in our back. That's not what we're thinking. We're thinking opportunity. But even those things are a good learning opportunity, because it teaches us a lot about other people, and it teaches us a lot about ourselves, because because it's and how we respond to things, how we bounce back from the situations that we find ourselves in. I'm a nutcase on this kind of thinking because I truly believe that there is no bad. Everything is good because it's a learning opportunity. And I'll give you a story. I was working in a Lexus store in Westport, Connecticut, and these two guys came to look at a used LX 470 that they lived in Greenwich and they bought all their Lexus cars in Greenwich. It was a guy and his brother-in-law. Okay. And this guy was obnoxious to say the least. So I'm sitting in the back. I figure, okay, it's my up, I'm down. I might as well just ride it out, right? And this guy is just doing his best to get under my skin. Finally, he looks in the rearview mirror and he says to me, "Am I pissing you off yet?" I said, "No, you're not." He says, "I'm not." Now he's perplexed because he was really trying to get under my skin. I said, "No, it's a win-win for me." He says, "What do you mean?" "Well, if you buy the car, we both win." So he says, "Well, what if I don't buy the car?" I said, "That's where I got you, because then I still win." He said, "How do you win if I don't buy the car?" I said, "Look, with all due respect, there's only so many guys like you that are going to come in here, like this many. And if you don't buy a car, I still win because going forward, that's one less of you that I have to deal with going forward. So you don't buy it, I don't really care. I still win."
Yep.
They were hysterical. Not only did they buy that car, I spotted them, and a year later, the guy came back with his wife, and they bought two brand new LX 470s, right? So the stuff that you encountered, the bad move, really was a good move because look at where you are now in here.
Oh yeah. No, I'm 1,000 times better for every move I've made that might have looked like a mistake on paper. But I learned what not to do. I learned from people that were worth learning from. I mean, everybody, even that bad stop I made down south, I learned from a few people, and one of them was the owner. I learned about Google and SEO and managing your online presence and Facebook, and I learned so much just from him. Granted, it was a horrible move on the other side of it, but the other stuff I learned, I couldn't have paid enough money to learn what I learned from him in a short amount of time on SEO, how to handle these things, Google reviews, things like that, that really take your store to the next level. And then, that branched out into this, and then next thing you know, I'm with SDL, and then I'm hanging out, and I've never hung out. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I get to talk to the Russell Hills of the world that helped me with my website and helped me grow it, and things like that. So then I get to learn another aspect of how websites work and this and that. And so it just adds to the whole culmination, and everything I've learned is just, when I sit back and I think, God, I'm almost to the point where I can almost sit back and write a book about just all the basics, just the foundational work of what it takes to be a good service manager. Not great, just good in this business anymore, from what it used to be to what it is today. There's a lot more facets that we have to do just to be good and not great. And so that's what gets me excited. That's what wakes me up in the morning. What's going to be the next thing? I've touched on the AI thing a little bit, the stuff that's going to be able to do. I mean, it's just amazing.
I want to get to a couple of comments.
Yeah.
I don't know if we fall too far behind, but I want to peel that, what you just said before. I want to dig a little deeper into that because you revealed something very interesting that I think is really noteworthy. So let me just go to a couple of comments here. Let's see here. We got my brother, Mike Vogel, whom I was fortunate to be able to share a meal with last week in California on my trip out there. That was wonderful. Mike, it was so great to see you, man. I hadn't seen him in about 3 years when we saw each other at NADA. So I'm so beyond thankful for being able to spend that time with you, man.
Yeah.
We got Vernon Davis. Jerry, you look great. And Lamont Harris, I'll be the first, LOL, but that's exact same self-awareness is what drives me to be better. That is key.
Yes.
Again.
And I've seen Lamont grow so much. Lamont is just, he's got so many opportunities ahead of him. And if I was ever going to be jealous of somebody in this business, it would be Lamont, because that guy is going to go places. Michael Barrich is one. There's so many people that I see them and how they interact with people. Mike Vogel. There's a lot of great guys and gals in this world that I just sit there and I'm like in awe when I hear them talk. And there's some people that if I can ever get out and meet some of these people, I'll probably get an autograph or start crying, one of the two, just because they're just so powerful to me and how they've changed my life.
Vernon Davis says, I'm guilty. I suck at a number of things. Mike Vogel, life is a continuous learning process. Adopt the Kaizen mindset, continuous
Absolutely.
improvement. And speaking of Russell Hill, never stops and we never arrive. That couldn't be any more true, Russell. Couldn't be any more true. My other Fixed Ops brother, Joseph Clementi. Good evening. Great to hear the inspiring story, Jerry Davis. Thanks for highlighting my Leo brethren, Paul Meijer. My birthday's coming up. What day is today? Today's the 6th.
Yeah.
Birthday's coming up in 3 days. I'll be on the road. Usually I'm home baking my cake for my birthday. That's not going to happen.
Well, happy birthday in preview. I just celebrated my 46th here a couple weeks ago. So
you're a young man, Jerry. You're a young man.
Young.
Happy birthday.
I'm young and I'm still good looking, believe it or not. I can't believe it. I got a beautiful face. If anything happens to this, I'm done.
You know what I love too? Is that I remember your reluctance to get on camera. You did not want to get on camera. You thought you weren't good enough. Yeah. And then you put out that first video and I'm like, Jerry, what the blank are you talking about? You rocked that video. You rocked that video. Anybody watching you now is like, what is this guy talking about? You were awesome on video. So you've made some
Again, I'm my own worst critic.
Let's see. Wendy Reeves. I also had the good fortune of having dinner with Wendy in California.
Lucky guy there.
So yeah, we had an awesome time. Wendy says, good evening, beautiful people. Jerry Davis and Paul Meijer. This is great, with the angel emoji. And Wendy says, do it, Jerry Davis. Write the book. Russell Hill says it takes great strength to share yourself, Jerry, with that level of vulnerability. I'm going to highlight that comment. It really does. It's the self-awareness taken to a higher plateau.
Well, it's a little bit more than just self-awareness. I'm not ashamed. I used to be ashamed of the things I've done, and I used to hide and be like, oh God, we don't talk about that stuff. And you know what? I really don't care. I do care. I shouldn't say it that way, but I just don't care that what my story is. I hope that it helps people. I hope that it helps people not make the same mistakes. But if it really triggers you in some way and you have some negative feelings towards anything I've said, or you have some opinion about my story, well, it's my story. I walked it. Until you walk it, we can't. Your opinion, it's not that it's not important to me, but if it's something that triggers you, then maybe we shouldn't even converse further, because at the end of the day, I'm going to trigger you a lot worse than just telling you some of the things I've done.
I love it.
And I'm not perfect. And I just, I can't stress that enough to not let people get in your head. And so even a few weeks ago, I had something happen and I let somebody get in my head and it really took me down. It affected my team. I saw it. I'm like, holy crap. I had to look in the mirror and be like, snap out of it. You're better than that. Move on, and let's go back to taking names and kicking butt. And so I had to get my own head right. In fact, I had to apologize to my team. I got up in front of them. I said, look, I'm sorry. I screwed up. I wasn't paying attention to you guys like I should have been. I let someone get in my head. And again, it's all about transparency. And our relationship was like, from that moment on, you could just feel it. It was like the team was like, oh my God, this guy's human. And so it's not anything bad. I don't care what anybody says, that you can't have emotions, you can't say you're sorry, you can't bullcrap. You can tell people you're sorry. You can admit your mistakes. You can show vulnerability. It doesn't hurt anybody. It makes everybody around you better, and it even makes you a better person for doing it.
People respect you more for it because you lead by example. Nobody's perfect. And for you to tell them flat out, look, I'm not perfect. I screwed up. That's huge.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Lamont Harris says, LOL, I love you more, Jerry. And Wendy says, you are going places, Jerry Davis. Your story is amazing. I concur with Wendy. It's a beautiful story. And Russell B. Hill says, look at you go, Jerry, rock and roll. He says, let go and let God.
Yep.
And Vernon Davis says, man, men have feelings too.
That's right. In fact, Vernon was talking about last week, tapping into your emotions, and as men, we're supposed to be strong, and we're supposed to. And my dad was one of those people. Like, it wasn't okay to cry in front of my dad. It was only okay to show emotions if it was an emotion that benefited him, and just a lot of stuff. As I've gotten older, and I look back and go, God dang, no wonder why I'm so screwed up. But again, I can't blame him. That's just how he was raised. I had a lot of anger for years about my father, and it was like an easy thing. Oh, my dad created this monster you see before you. No, I created that monster you see before you because I didn't get up off my butt and learn from my own mistakes. And the biggest thing is that I have showed more emotion and vulnerability in the last probably 2 to 3 years than I have in my entire life. 5 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting on this show right now doing this with you, talking about my emotions and feelings, because I would have been like, well, probably shouldn't do that because someone from work might see it. I really don't care. I hope someone from work sees this, and I hope someone from work takes away and gets to see me in a different light other than at work. But I'm pretty much the same guy I am on here as I am at work. So again, high expectations, accountability, but I'm vulnerable, honest, transparent. I'm the first one to tell a customer, I know we're in the customer service business, but I'm the first one to tell a customer that they're out of line. Like, you wait, we're not even on the same planet, let alone the same page. Let me hear what you have to say. I'm here to try and help you with your situation, but at the end of the day, we may not agree at the end of this. And as long as I walk into it with that mindset and think, it's not about winning or losing. I'll give away the farm sometimes if I have to, but I tend not to give away the farm to a customer that literally has just driven into my dealership for the first time. But I will give away the farm to that customer that's bought 10 cars from us, that has been loyal to us, and we dropped the ball. And I don't care what I look like at that point. We screwed up. And that's just how it is. So again, every situation is different, but again, not having the fear of talking to a customer and responding to a Google review or responding to a Facebook post or responding to something, that's out there, because again, that customer has opened the door for that conversation to be out in a public forum. So why not continue it in a public forum and show people how you deal with those situations?
I like that. I want to expand that in just a second here. I just want to catch up on a couple of comments. Sure. Joseph Clementi, authentic leadership is recognizing we are all wonderfully flawed. And Wendy says, Vernon Davis and Jerry sharing his is inspiring others who can relate but are silent. They too use their voices ultimately because Jerry paved the way. Well done. Now, the takeaway, the second takeaway that is huge, okay, is that we all are affected by things that happened in our past. And a lot of people are, woe is me. This is what happened to me. This is what my childhood was. And this is why I am the way that I am. People choose what to do with that. Okay. You can choose to be the victim, or you can choose to learn from that and say to yourself, damn it, I know this has been the cycle, but I refuse to repeat the cycle. And that cycle, I'm going to take out a big pair of clips and I'm going to cut that chain now. And going forward, I'm going to be different than those before me. Those are two distinctly different places in the head, right?
Yeah.
Because most people fall victim to what happened to them.
Absolutely.
Few others realized that the things that happened for a reason, and you're at a crossroads, and you're at that point where you decide which way you're going to go.
Well, I used to have that victim mentality, and I'll share something that I've shared it in SDL, I think, but I haven't shared it very much because I tend to keep it a little private. But at the end of the day, there was a point in time, long before I met my wife, and I was in a bad place. I was not a very good person. I was a very mad person. I drank all the time. This was when I was a technician, angry that I hurt my back and went through my divorce with my first wife, and it was just bad. I was in a bad headspace, and I did attempt to take my own life at one point. And I look back on that moment not in shame. I used to be ashamed of it, but I don't look back on it anymore, because then I think back that the good Lord kept me here. The good Lord had a purpose for me, and I'm not saying my purpose is to be the fixed ops guru or anything like that, but my purpose is to help people. And ever since then, I have kept relationships with certain individuals throughout my journey. Um, you know, the greatest reward for me is moving back here. I left that Toyota dealership in 12 years ago, and I went back to there and I met my first hire that I ever made at the Toyota store. And he's still working there. And the guy walked up. He's a man now. He was a kid when I hired him. He's a grown man now, and he's got a wife and kids. And he thanked me for getting him the job. And he remembers what I told him the first day when I hired him. He remembers, he goes, you know, Jerry, I remember everything you taught me. And he goes, the one thing you taught me is, he goes, don't be late and don't screw up. And I've never done those two things. And that was like the biggest, it almost brings a tear to my eye. I'm not an emotional person, and I try not to show those things, but that was the biggest reward I could have ever received, ever in my entire life. I've shaken the hands of presidents and CEOs and that kind of stuff. Those are the people that come and go through your life. But that guy right there, I tell you what, to see him being a master certified Toyota technician, I hired him as a lube tech. And
Wow.
I just, that was the biggest like high five from Jesus right there I could have ever gotten. And from then on, you know, and it's just been one of those things where I look at that moment, and that happened pretty recently. And I always think back to that moment when I'm thinking that, why do I do what I do? Why do I get out of bed? Things like that. And I still talk to technicians and service advisors and people like that. And I've just maintained those relationships over the years. And that was a big one. Usually it's over the phone. You talk to them, you text them, happy birthday, those types of things. But to see the smile on his face when he saw me walk into the service department, and he goes, you're still the best manager I ever had. You're the first guy that ever gave me a chance. Nobody would hire me. And now look at me. I'm married. I got kids. I just getting ready to buy a house. And it was all thanks to you giving me a chance. That was huge.
Wow. You know, when I go through life, I think, you know, I don't think just about the immediate. I think about one day, and it's a short journey, right?
Oh,
In the
very
blink of an
short.
eye, I'll be 62 on the 9th. And that
Wow.
happened in the blink of an eye. In my head, I'm still 12, and my wife will concur. But it happens really fast, right? But when you think about when you do things in your life, how have you impacted others, right? What have you done to make our world a better place for others? And certainly that technician, when you gave him an opportunity, that changed his life.
It
Like,
did.
it's an amazing business we have. There is no greater business than the auto business.
Yeah.
And you helped guide that guy. So that's wonderful. Jerry Vernon Davis says, thank you for the mention. Wendy says, stronger together, people helping people. And yay, hashtag STL. Now, let's go into, so you learned, even in bad things, you learned some good things. You
Yeah.
learned about Google, you learned about the importance of social media, but I want to touch now on something that you said before the show started, and that's something that is radically different than the mindset of, I'm going to guess, 90 to 98% of the people. When a customer, and people are funny with reviews, right? Our expectations today are here. Reality is somewhere down here, and the OEMs want you to be somewhere up here. That's just the fact, right?
Yep.
I did a Facebook post about an experience that I had at a dry cleaner that was really wonderful. And somebody in the group, it's my group, they questioned why I shared that and why I didn't share a couple of local businesses that did the same thing. So I believe in sharing the good, not necessarily pointing out the bad. So if I don't share something or someone, there's probably a good reason for that, but I don't want to publicly shame them. So she accused me of all kinds of horrible things. And so I messaged her privately and said, you don't know the history. Turns out she's the new owner of the business. I said, you might want to check the customer files and go back and check the last 3 interactions that I had with the store, and you'll have a better grasp of why things, why I don't. So if you're the new owner, God bless you. Hopefully you've learned from the ills of the previous one, and you're doing great things. But people, they get funny about that kind of stuff. But what struck me with you is that when a customer starts something online, I'll say everybody will say, we're sorry you had a bad experience. Contact us at 1-800-555-1212 and let's take it offline. Almost like we're not wrong, but I don't want people to know what happened. So why don't you contact us offline? They are afraid. They are afraid to engage the customer online because they're afraid it's going to start off some kind of a pissing contest. Yep. And it's going to spiral downwards real quickly. But the way you so eloquently put it, the customer started the conversation online. Why would you then deprive the customer of their due day or their due justice online where they started it? So you had a story. Why don't you share with the audience what you told me regarding that customer that said one thing, you did what they said, and then they just took it way out of proportion online. I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah. So what I was doing is I was when I was working with the owner and looking at Google reviews and SEO and all the stuff that matters to the internet world, I came across a story about a Toyota dealer in Canada, and they had done an engine job and they had to do a tear down, and the dealership was like, it's not warranty. Here's the reason why, et cetera, et cetera. And, you read the invoice, like, okay, it makes sense. It happens all the time. You tear it down. You never change the oil or whatever it was. And the customer sent an email to the service manager and said, I want my engine in the back of the car. I want the parts put in the box, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So service manager did exactly what the customer asked. Well, then the customer goes and picks up their vehicle, gets it sent home. And then they do this Google review where they take pictures and say, oh my God, look at how they treated me. Look at what they did to my car. They put the engine in the back, and I never requested that. I thought my engine was going to be put back together. And it was a good 4-page Google review of how this dealership and service manager are the worst people on the planet. And then I got the pleasure of reading the response from the service manager. He pulled up the email. He pulled up all the information. He put the receipt online. He took away the VIN number and all the stuff that could be traced back to that person's personal life.
Yeah.
But turned around and said, hey, we did exactly what you asked of us. And here you are blasting us on Facebook or on Google. And I'm sorry you feel that way, but we thought we did what you asked us to do. And we're more than willing to revisit this if you'd like. And give you options that we were trying to give you before you sent us this nasty email and told us to put your stuff in your car. And to me, that was just empowering. I was like, you don't have to sit there and lay down and get kicked there's times we screw up. You get a Google review and whether it's the advisor, me, whatever, we dropped the ball and we screwed up big time. And we have to fix that. And we can do the same thing. We can respond and say, you're right, Mr. Customer. We messed up. We're sorry. Please give us a call. Here, we have some options for you. And you can even put the options out there if you want to. I usually never do that. I try to get that conversation going. But then on the back end, when the customer says, you guys are the worst people on the planet. You did me wrong. How dare you? It's okay to come back and say, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, did we misunderstand our communications? Because here's the text features of when we were texting you, and here's the conversation we had, and where did we miss what we were supposed to do based on our conversation, or here's what we came up with for a resolution. And so to me, when I go to look at a store, or I look at a business that I'm going to spend my money at, I look at the Google reviews. It's the first thing I do. And I don't look at the star rating. I don't care if they're a 4.1 or a 5 or whatever. If they're a 5, they're buying the reviews and they're lying. I don't give a damn who they are. If they're a 4.6 to a 4.8, they're doing some stuff right, but they're probably still buying those reviews away a little bit. And then I think an honest score on Google's 4.1 to 4.5. I really do. And I go and look at how they respond to those Google reviews before I do business. And if there's someone that, I'm not saying we have to smack the customer in the face, but it's okay to stand up and have a little bit of a backbone and say, hey, A, we were wrong, or B, hey, you're a little out of place because here's what we tried to do for you. We tried to resolve this. We offered discounts. We did whatever we tried to do right by you. And I'm sorry that you still have the opinion that you have, and we wish you nothing but continued success and, whatever it might be. And I've even had former employees get online and get on Google and tank a Google review. And I'll be the first one to say, oh, by the way, this is a former employee that we had to fire for stealing, or we had to fire for this or fire for that. And I'm not above putting someone on blast. Again, they've opened the door to the conversation in public.
Right.
I'm not doing anything different than what they're doing. I'm not going to do it in a negative manner. I'm going to try and make that the most positive conversation we can have. But I'm also going to let them know that, hey, we read these, and hey, this isn't what happened. Or, hey, we read these and we really screwed up. Please give us another chance. We're sorry, whatever the case may be. But it's okay to stand up for yourself online.
Yeah. Nobody says you have to roll over. And you do it respectfully, right?
Yeah.
I think you gain a tremendous amount of respect from people with that.
Yep.
Michael Larkin says spot on about how to review respond. So, yeah. So to those out there, if you're afraid to have the conversation online, hey, we're very resilient in the car business, right?
Yeah.
If we're ready to change, I would say try it, because if I'm a customer and somebody respectfully engages me in that way, there's a reason why they took it online. And if you're a smart store, you're going to realize that it's, short of it being a fake review, because those do happen.
Yep.
But if it's a real situation, there's nothing wrong with being honest with yourself and learning from the experience. It's no different than on the variable side of things, the look to book. There are so many stores that will delete appraisals that they are unable to buy. And that's crazy, only because they don't want the numbers to make them look bad. But here's how I look at it. I look at it as a learning opportunity. If I find that I'm continually unable to buy 2018 to 2021 Passats with 30 to 50,000 miles, but yet my competitors are successfully buying those, I don't want to hide that.
No.
I want to find out, why am I not able to do something that the other people are doing, and learn from that, and maybe have a conversation with them and find out what I could do to now become that guy that's able to buy those. So with the reviews, if you're honest with yourself and you say, hey, you know what? This customer took time out of their day to blast me, whether they did it respectfully or not respectfully. If the points are valid, they're valid. Their choice of words is their choice of words. Who am I to say yes or no as to whether or not it's the right thing? But your point of responding to them respectfully in that same arena, I think that's brilliant. Now, a couple other things I want to get to, because the show is going. You had recently gone to an EV class, because that's the big buzzword today. Everybody's all charged up about it. See what I did there, Mike Larkin? That's his saying. See what I did there? I use that at home with my wife now. And oh, by the way, when it comes to reviews, anybody out there that's watching either live or on the replay, if you're not connected with Michael Larkin, he's in the chat thread here. Connect with that guy. He's got some really, really interesting ways to propel you on Google. It all starts with a conversation, right? So you went to this EV class. It was an hour long, and interestingly enough, it ended a certain way. Why don't you tell us how it ended?
Yeah, we it was from the manufacturer, and we spent a good hour online. It was almost an hour and a half, really. And the last half hour of it, we talked about tires.
What?
which is, I mean, really, when you think about it, tires, we should be selling tires on, gas cars and hybrids, and we should be selling tires on everything. But I just found it kind of humorous that now here we are in 2023 and manufacturers just getting around to tires are important now, because that's the only thing you're going to have for these EVs is you're going to have cabin filters, wipers, software updates, and coolant flushes at 100,000 miles, because a lot of them have a coolant system to keep the batteries cool. And that's all you got. And then they're like, oh, by the way, when you sell tires, what's the one thing you're supposed to sell with a tire? An alignment. And it was like day one. I felt like I was in a day one service advisor class at the end of a EV class. And it was just kind of, I found some humor in it. I get where they were coming from. And then on my store, I'll be the first to tell you, we do a horrible job of selling tires. The staff that I inherited were never trained on the importance of tires, looking at the dates. These are all things that I'm going to start teaching them, because we had to fix other things first. And that's the one thing I'm going to say about everything I do. I don't do it as quickly as some people do, because Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't build a house without a foundation. All the key things you want to say out there. There's 1,000 ways to skin that cat. Yep. But I got to focus on what's important first, and that's number one is culture, attitude, and how we engage our customers. And so I just found that hilarious, though, that an hour and a half long EV class, we talked about chargers and hybrids and regenerative braking and on all these things that are the new words that we're going to have to learn, which I've known for years, because Toyota had a great hybrid program and they taught me a lot of that stuff, and so does Chrysler and a lot of the other manufacturers. But I just found it hilarious that now they're like, oh, now we have to teach you guys on how to sell tires. And I was just like, are you kidding me? This is how we're going to end this thing, is selling tires.
Back to basics, Jerry. Back to basics.
Yeah, back to basics. I get it. But I was just like, wow, this is where we're going to go in the future. And, at the end of the day, I made a few funny comments in there. And I'm like, okay, so to hear you guys tell it, we don't need advisors anymore. So I might as well fire the advisor staff, put kiosks in, and have Brook AI answer the phones, and we'll be done with everything. And then I can just sit on my ivory tower and watch the EVs roll in, because that's what you guys are making it sound like. And no matter what they say, EVs are great. I'm not here to bash EVs and say that they're not good, but I am here to tell you that EVs got a long way to go. The infrastructure's not really ready for it. The first thing I come to mind when I think of EV stuff is an apartment complex. You got people that live in an apartment complex. Where are they going to charge these EV cars? Are we going to have extension cords running out the window and charging their EVs? No. Is the apartment complex going to invest and put 25 charging stations out front, and then there's 100 people fighting over 25 stations? Nope. So there's a lot of room for growth. I'm not saying there isn't a place and a time for EV stuff, but the one thing that they never touched on, and it kind of bothered me a little bit, was the customer experience. It was all about the technology, the this, the that. Yeah. They never touched on how to take care of that customer and what we're going to have to be doing to make sure, because I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but the EV customer or your high-end customer is a different customer than my Jeep Wrangler customer. And I have to know the difference between those people. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but again, where does that start? Right here at this guy. I got to know me. I got to know what my reactions are. I got to know how to handle those people. And the best thing I ever did for myself was I did a disc assessment on myself. And I looked at that.
Wow, who does that?
And if I did a disc assessment on myself, then I know how to relate to people, because I know I'm an alpha. I already knew I was an alpha. I always knew I'm always a D. That's never going to change. But the funny thing is when I took it like 15 years ago, and I was a 100% dominant personality. There was no change in my mind. And now I'm kind of like I've changed I'm a DI now. And so you can change, and that's the best thing I could tell anybody as we get to the end of this is, it's okay to change. It's okay to find a different path. It's okay to admit that you might not have been on the right path, but now you are. And the one thing I'll tell anybody, do it for your family and yourself. Don't do it for anybody else. I spent the first 10 years in the dealership world worried about what the owner thought of me. And the day I left that store, after 10 years of working there, I didn't get a handshake. I didn't quit. I gave them a 2-week notice, and I worked there. And they're like, "Why are you leaving?" I said, "Hey, this is an opportunity for me. I want to get out of this town. I want to grow. I just don't feel I'm going to grow anymore. I couldn't go any higher. The next step was to be a GM, and that was never going to happen because I wasn't in that mindset yet. And just to remember that how defeated I was when they just kicked me out the door. No, thank you. No, nothing. No, like I didn't expect a parade. They were mad that I was leaving, and I get that, but there was no like, hey, thanks for the last 10 years. You worked 6, 7 days a week. You never took vacation. You never did, and there was none of that. And I really realized then that I'm like, you know what? Take your time off, enjoy the time with your family, go to the baseball games, go to the soccer games, go to the weddings, go on the vacations with the wife, whatever that is that you're in your life. Don't ever disappoint your family members for the owner that really you're to a lot of owners, and I don't want to pigeonhole every owner in the world because they're not all this way. But don't pigeonhole yourselves to get a validation for somebody that there's a reason you have an employee number, and I'll leave it at that.
You gave 22, 23% of your life on earth you spent with this company.
Yep.
And not even so much as a handshake on the way out.
No, it was a get out the store, turn in your keys to the sales manager, and get the hell out of my store was the conversation. And but you know what? In the car business, and one thing I did learn from that is karma. So that happened. They kicked me out of the store basically. And it was about 4 weeks later, I'd moved to my new job. I was doing my new thing. I bought a house, and I was never happier. This new job was the greatest thing, and everything was going great. And the owner called, and I'm like, wow, okay, this ought to be good. And I normally wouldn't have taken the call. I was still mad, but I'm like, you know what? I want to hear what he has to say. He called up and it was asking me all these questions like, well, how did you do this? And how did you do that? You were the only one that did this. What do you do here? And I said, well, sir, I said, at the end of the day, you told me to get out of your store and never look back. And I don't know why you're calling me because you told me to leave. And he goes, well, we need you. We have to have we need your help. The store's crippled. The accounting's all off. The office manager, you're hurting her and you're hurting all the people you left behind and this and that. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll come down on a Saturday and I'll spend Saturday and Sunday at your store with you there, with the office manager and whoever else you want in the room. And I'll show them everything I know about the accounting stuff and this, that, and the other thing that you're asking me about. He goes, oh, you'd do that for me? I said, yeah, and I'm not even going to charge you. I only have one request. And he goes, what's that? And I said, you tell me you're sorry for kicking me out of your store after 10 years, and I'll do it in a heartbeat. And he said, I'll never apologize to you. Hung up the phone. 2 weeks later, he called me back and he goes, if an apology is what it's going to take, then I'll do it. And I said, okay. When I get there, before I even step foot in your store, we sit outside and we have a conversation. And we had that conversation and we shook hands, and that's where it stayed. And that's karma. That was karma for me. And that's the one thing I've learned is that no matter how bad it gets, no matter how crappy of a decision, if you make the wrong decision and you get led down a bad path, karma comes back to those people that led you into darkness every single time. And you just need to remember that you're a beacon of light and that you are here to do better in this world. And that's how I need to leave it.
Wow, man, talk about a powerful way to end this week's show.
And then one other thing, I have one small request on this platform. Everybody knows Sean Butler. Sean Butler has made it quite clear he's dealing with some very difficult medical stuff. And I just want to let Sean know, and I'm sure everybody on here knows, that we're all here for you, Sean. We're praying for you. We're here for you. Everybody's got your number. If you need anything or want anything, you're just a phone call away, and God's with you and I'm with you, and I know everybody in this room's with you. So don't give up that fight because you're going to make it, Sean, and we're here for you, my friend.
Wow. Thank you for saying that. It's so funny. Yesterday, I called Sean. I had called him before. He didn't take the call. It went to voicemail, but I know he's going through a lot of stuff. But we did text back and forth. I said, look, man, we're all there for you. So, I'm echoing what you said when I spoke with him, or when when I exchanged text with him yesterday, I said, we're all there for you. We're just a phone call away. We understand you're going through stuff, but just know that we are all there pulling the rope in your direction. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff that goes on during the daytime that sometimes, I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Paul, for everything that you do for our business. Thank you for having me on. It's been a great honor and a great pleasure, and I just look forward to our next encounter. And one of these days, we're going to meet person to person, and I need to get out there and check out your wife's yarn store.
Absolutely, man. So stay on after we sign off here. To
Yes,
those
sir.
that watched tonight that contributed, thank you very much. I appreciate the support. To those watching on the replay, thank you. If what you saw here will help somebody, by all means, share the episode with them. And Jerry and I are always looking to grow our network with like-minded professionals. So if you're not connected with me or you're not connected with Jerry, by all means, send us a connection request. If we're relevant to our business, we would be happy to connect with you. So with that, Jerry, thank you again for being on. And I wish everybody a safe and successful next week. And we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Stay on, Jerry.